little to no medicine to help them feel better. Needles reused over and over. And Mother Teresa, she thought this was a good thing. She literally said there is something beautiful in seeing the poor accept their lot, to suffer it like Christ's passion. Sounds wonderful, in theory, but not so much for the people actually screaming in agony. Then there's money. There's always money. She was amazing at fundraising. Rich people couldn't hand over their cash fast enough. But where did all that money go? Not to improving those homes. Millions of dollars disappeared, tucked away in secret accounts. A former volunteer once said there was no transparency. Nobody knew where the money was going. That doesn't exactly scream responsible charity. She also had a few sketchy friendships. She accepted millions from Charles Keating, a guy who stole from elderly people. When someone pointed this out, she didn't give the money back. Instead, she wrote to the court defending him, saying, "I do not know anything about Mr. Keating's business dealings." She knew enough to cash a check. Her advice to poor women? She went to places where families were starving and told them to keep having more kids. Imagine struggling to feed the kids you already have and being told it's your job to have more. Not super helpful. Having said all that, Mother Teresa did dedicate her life to helping the poor. She gave up personal comforts and worked in some of the hardest conditions imaginable. She brought global attention to the struggles of the poorest people on earth. Her methods were questionable and sometimes harmful, but her commitment was something worth
How the
recognizing.
fuck is
Let's
my
call her a
birthday
mixed bag.
catching up to me, my
Next is
nigga?
John Lennon, Mr. Beatles himself. The guy who told the world to give peace a chance while seemingly giving no one in his personal life the same courtesy. For a man who preached love, harmony, and nonviolence, his real life actions.
Choose to follow your
Hey,
instincts.
what the fuck?
Every Mazda is designed to feel like it was made just for you.
Tell a very different story. First, let's start with his violent streak. Lennon openly admitted to physically abusing women, including his first wife, Cynthia. He confessed
Bro,
in a
what the
1984
fuck?
interview that he was a quote-unquote hitter and had spent much of his early life consumed by uncontrollable anger. Cynthia endured years of emotional and physical abuse, which Lennon later tried to dismiss as part of his younger self. But let's be real, there is no excuse for that. And then there's how he treated his son Julian. When Lennon sang about peace and understanding, he openly neglected Julian after his divorce. In fact, Lennon admitted that he had practically no relationship with Julian, and callously referred to him as an unplanned mistake, compared to Sean, his planned son with Yoko Ono. Imagine being a child and hearing your father say that, publicly. That's not just bad parenting, it's emotional cruelty on another level. But Lennon's hypocrisy didn't stop there. He spent the late 1960s and early 1970s preaching world peace, but behind closed doors, his behavior was anything but peaceful. For example, his infamous 1974 Lost Weekend period, where he separated from Yoko, was riddled with drunken brawls and violent outbursts. At one point, he got into a physical altercation with a waitress at the Troubadour Club in Los Angeles after being kicked out for heckling performers. Yeah, the peace icon punched a waitress. So yeah, he gave us music that inspired the world, but his personal life often undermined everything he claimed to stand for. He was not a saint. MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., the man, the legend, and the one whose I Have a Dream speech totally redefined history. But as we've seen, legends aren't perfect. That doesn't mean that MLK wasn't a hero. He was just human, with a few messy chapters in an otherwise extraordinary story. Let's start with his PhD dissertation. In 1991, it was revealed that a few parts of it were plagiarized, and not in a, whoops, I forgot a footnote kind of way. Entire sections were lifted from scholars, like Paul Tillich and Edgar Brightman. Now, in MLK's defense, academic standards back then were more like vague suggestions. Boston University investigated and decided to keep his degree intact, basically saying that he changed the world, so let's call him Mulligan. Okay, fair enough. Then there's the FBI, led by J. Edgar Hoover, who apparently made MLK his personal obsession. They wiretapped him, followed him, and claimed he had extramarital affairs. Hoover probably had ulterior motives, like being a colossal racist. But the FBI didn't just pull these allegations out of thin air. Records suggest that MLK's personal life had its complicated moments, including relationships outside his marriage. Not ideal, but also not exactly an uncommon story for men under immense pressure and in positions of power. But here's where it gets interesting. None of this dims his legacy. If anything, it makes it more remarkable. MLK wasn't some untouchable saint. He was a flawed, complicated man who still managed to move mountains. Alright, JFK, the guy whose face is on half the schools and airports in America. But maybe it shouldn't be. Let's talk about the affairs. These weren't just harmless flings, but a pattern of reckless infidelity. Marilyn Monroe was the most infamous, but JFK's list of lovers extended to multiple women, including Judith Campbell Exner, who had ties to mob boss Sam Giancana. Think about that. The President of the United States, during one of the most tense periods in global history, was sleeping with someone linked to organized crime. This wasn't a personal indiscretion, it was a potential national security threat. Then there's the sheer volume. Secret Service agents reported smuggling women to the White House, some barely vetted. Again, not a lapse in judgment, but a systemic abuse of power. While JFK was supposed to be focused on Cuban Missile Crisis and his attention was elsewhere. He undermines the trust and integrity expected of a leader. His affairs turned what was otherwise a celebrated legacy into one mired in questions about his judgment. We'll talk about Walt Disney, the guy who created the happiest place on earth. That is, unless you happen to work for him or share different political beliefs. On the surface, he's all about magic and family values. But dig a little deeper, and suddenly things get less bibbidi-bobbidi-boo and more, yikes. First up, his ties to the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. A far-right group so subtle they might as well have carried flashing neon signs that read, "We hate communists," and maybe a few other groups too. This wasn't a casual, I attended one meeting kind of situation. Walt was a proud member of this group, which was notorious for its staunch anti-communist stance. And by staunch, I mean they equated anyone wanting fair labor practices with a Soviet spy. The group also pushed anti-Semitic rhetoric, which, if you're running an empire based on inclusivity and imagination, isn't a great look. And speaking of workers, the 1941 animator strike showed Walt's true colors. When his employees asked for better pay and working conditions, he didn't like sprinkle magic sticks on their hands. Instead, he called them communists and radicals, then made it his mission to ruin their careers. Think of him as the original villain in the fight for workers' rights, but instead of twirling a mustache, he sicked the House Un-American Activities Committee on anyone who dared to cross him. Walt's approach to unions and his far-right affiliations paint a picture that's a lot darker than the one on Main Street, USA. Like, yeah, he gave us Mickey Mouse, but for his workers, this could not have been further from a fairy tale ending. Anyway, we do things that you'll like this video next, so like it. Also, subscribe.
The Deadliest Outlaws of the Wild West. This is a cartoonish video, but who gives a because it's going over the Deadliest Outlaws of the Wild West, and that seems interesting.
Let's start with the dangerous and slowly work our way towards the most deadly outlaws on the list.
I don't know of any outlaws in the Wild West. Name an outlaw in the Wild West, and don't say Arthur Morgan. One that actually existed. Bonnie and Clyde. Bank robbers. Oh, Billy the Kid. Yeah, that's like the only one that I know. It was easier to be a criminal in the Wild West because everything was so far apart. No one ever recognized you. There were no cameras, no fingerprints. It was a lot easier to just walk into a bank with a gun, take their leave, and never come back. And so stories would be told about outlaws, and they would draw pictures and them to try to find who they were. Because it was a lot harder to find criminals back in the in the United States days. What was the Wild West? Like the 1700s? 1607? 1607 to 1912. It was a very long period. The period that most people remember Wild West characters in was the mid to late 1800s.
Number 10, Clay Allison. Clay Allison was nothing short of a wild man, a notorious gun.
They always have like the most random acting photo. Like, what the? Is that actually him?
Fighter who earned a reputation for being extremely violent. In 1870, when Allison led an angry mob to the local jail to break out a man named Charles Kennedy, who had recently been convicted of murder, he would break him out of his cell only
the fuck is wrong with you, bitch?
What? So he got everybody to be like, that guy was wrongly in prison.
What is wrong with you, pussy?
And they went, hell yeah,
this nigga just tackled the fuck out of me.
And then they got him out.
I ain't do shit, my nigga.
But for Allison, the man was not dead enough. So he began to decapitate the man as well, placing his head on a stake and proudly displaying it at the local saloon, which of course traumatized all of the children who were coming in for a
Oh,
drink. Allison was such a wild man that he would oftentimes be seen riding his horse through town, completely naked, with nothing but his pistol on his hip.
Oh, dude, are these real people though? Like, that's a real guy. Like, he was butt naked, riding a horse, decapitated a guy. Like, how do they not die? They always die young though. Like, I feel like every one of these stories, it's gonna be like, yeah, Clay Allison, he had a long career. He died when he was 24. He started robbing when he was 12. You'd be like, holy shit, what the fuck?
But my favorite incident was when Allison accepted a dinner with a man named Chunk Colbert. Chunk was a notorious gunfighter who was rumored to have killed 7 men up to this point. And it was no secret that Chunk wanted nothing more than to see Allison dead. Now,
So they ate dinner together and then did a gunfight? Yo, I would so cheat in a gunfight. They're dead. What are they gonna fuck? If some guy goes, yeah, I'm challenging you to a fucking shoot all. 10 paces and then we shoot. 1, 2, I turn around and shoot him in the fucking head. I ain't doing one shot either. I'm gonna be going, and then fucking, and then I walk away. Challenge you to a duel. Yeah, then other people kill you. That's what it is. Because other people watch, and if you cheat, they'll kill you.
of course, Allison knew this, but he still accepted Chunk's dinner invitation nonetheless. While in the middle of eating dinner, out of nowhere, Chunk would jump out of his chair and quickly drawing his gun to shoot Allison dead, only to hit the edge of the table with his pistol, which prevented him from raising it up any further. And in one swift motion, Allison drew his weapon, shooting Chunk between the eyes. When asked by the locals why on earth would he ever accept dinner with a man he knew
Is he
wanted to kill
fucking
him,
dumb?
to which he replied,
Oh my god, my
because I
deep is his
didn't want to
ass.
send a man to hell on an empty stomach.
Damn.
Number 9.
Yo, that's kind of badass though.
Cherokee Bill. Crawford Goldsby, or better known
Bro,
as
this shit
Cherokee
can't be
Well, like
fucking
that,
serious,
like
bro.
this kid gotta be like 15 and killed like 400 people. Like, if that's what
You
it's
can
gonna
stop
keep
talking like
getting
you
into.
a
We're gonna
bitch.
see
I
one of
hate
these
niggas
pictures,
like
it's gonna be a toddler.
Hate
They
niggas
call him
like
Salty Dan. Salty Dan killed 5 people before he turned 4.
was an infamous outlaw who was responsible for the murder of 8 to 13 men.
What?
Bill would become an outlaw in 1894 at the age of 18 when he would confront a man that had beaten up his brother. But once he was face to face with him,
Bro,
he
why the
realized
fuck is this nigga
he didn't want to
playing
get
like
beat up
this,
as
bro?
well. So he would just end up shooting the man instead.
Oh my god.
And from this point on, he would live the rest of his life on the run as a wanted criminal. Shortly after this incident, Cherokee Bill would join an outlaw group
Who
called
is
the
a
Cook
pure
Gang,
bitch?
which specialized in robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches. Cherokee Bill's crime spree was long and involved many heinous crimes. But to better understand this man's
How the
insane
fuck, my
Deadass get
nigga?
away with any
I'm
crime
done.
in like the
She
1800s.
just cute dicks in it.
You could kill someone and then just go over to the next town. And like,
Foul!
okay, maybe not the next town, maybe like a few towns over, like a 30-minute drive, and they're never gonna see you. Like, it's just like, what the fuck?
Fucking
What
annoying.
crime would you commit? Rob a bank, dude. Oh my god. If I could fucking, because I know some of the outlaws were like chill, where they would, because they used to have debt only on paper. Like now, if you're in debt to a bank, they fucking have that everywhere. Like you can't wipe people's debt clean. But people that would rob banks in the 1800s would walk into the bank, rob the bank, and then rip up all the debt bills and leave.
Golazo! Golazo!
At the end of the day,
Gol! 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 Let's go, you cheating ass bitch ass nigga. See this sexy ass shit again. Ooh.
Silbato final del partido. Hasta acá llegamos. Empate en el Santiago Bernabéu.
Kylian Mbappé. Kylian Mbappé. Bro, that was sexy, my nigga. Yeah. Damn, shorty. I'm sick as a bitch, bro. Damn, this shit had me stressing, my nigga. Fuck.